President has sent to other world leaders in those phone calls. Here in Istanbul, we're joined by political analyst Onur Erim. Onur, always a pleasure to have you on. It's very interesting. It's pretty obvious that most of the global north is talking about Israel's right to defend itself. Most, it seems, of the global south is pointing at Israel as the aggressor. Not surprising where Turkiye comes into this equation.
Of course, and as you just summed it up very nicely, I think all the points that came out from all these phone diplomacies that President Erdogan has held were exactly to the point and just summed up what I believe also to be the exact scenario that's being played out right now in the Middle East. Obviously, the aggressive behavior of Israel has not really been met with, strong opposition, especially by the Western powers. And but I think and I hope that at this day and time, that this would be the highest point of their, uncontrollable aggression towards anybody in the region, and now the focus seems to be on Iran. But again, this is going to have a lot of obviously probably not just short term but also mid and long term effects. And Erdogan, as Turkey should, as Turkey has historically done, is trying to act as responsible as it can, and trying to take as much weight off the shoulders of the rest of the world as being the superpower in the region, because this affects obviously everybody in the region, and probably in a very major way it affects Turkey as well in many different ways. So we are most at stake as Turkey. We must make sure that this doesn't escalate to a higher level than it already has, and we must make sure that there's some sustainable peace, or at least a peace of mind in the region for people to to come back together, to make sure that most things like the nuclear talks are not disrupted again, and there's some kind of stability that is long sought after in the region.
Imagine if Benjamin Netanyahu got his way, Onur, and there was to be a change of government in Iran. Look what happened to Iraq. Look what happened to Syria when Bashar al-Assad wasn't able to hold the country together. There's a huge unknown here. And after all, with what Israel is doing in Gaza, all Middle Eastern countries agree on their position, but they aren't able to take any actual action because, of course, they can't go to war with Israel. So it's a little bit of helplessness for the region as well, because if the Americans are backing Israel, what is the Middle East going to do about that?
It obviously is, and maybe I may defer with just one line. I'm in the same position as you. I may just defer in one line. The powers to be in the region elected not to get into any kind of conflict with Israel, and those are probably more for financial or self-sustaining reasons for those countries. I don't think anybody can actually name any other country in the region that has suffered and is still suffering in many ways for her support for Israel except Turkey. Turkey is the only international powerhouse in the region that has explicitly and openly has expressed its view and its stand on the occupation of Israel, of the Palestine, and has suffered for years and still suffering for this. So those countries that are probably a little bit on the better side, at least financially in the region, the reason they opted to stay out, the reason that they did not really give a serious hand, most of those countries, to this conflict, is because they just didn't want their own way of life, or they didn't want their own financial structure to be damaged. And Turkey, who again is from a couple of these nations at least are in a less favorable position financially, has suffered and did not step back despite all the negative things that we have suffered. As I said, everybody has to chip in. There is a thing that everybody has to realize. The world, I think, ever since the beginning has it should have a balance. Whenever you have a not a good weight balance in the world, things are not going to look good. I don't think, despite the power of the Israeli community around the world, Zionist community around the world, I think the rest of the powers in the world will need to come back to their senses and make sure that this is just unacceptable to the point that it got, and everybody has to, kind of know their place and know their stand, and that there has to be something real that has to be done about the occupation of Israel in Palestine, and about the possible regime change in Iran and other places. I think we have lived, especially in this region, over and over, any kind of change that does not come from within the country itself, from within the citizens of those countries itself, will never last, and it will probably end up worse. Any kind of change that is infiltrated by the outside powers are doomed for, the country would be doomed for even a worse position. Maybe not in the first few years or so, but in the midterm for sure. So if there's to be a change in Iran, in the regime, that must be decided, and that must be calculated by the Iranians themselves, not by any kind of force from outside of Iran.
Oh no, Aaron, thank you so much for your time.